Welcome everyone to a novel way to address the disproportionate rate at which youth with disabilities are overrepresented in the school-to-prison nexus. My name is Brian Medina. My pronouns are Z, here, and heres. I am a non-binary person with long brown curly hair and dark brown eyes. I have dangling multicolored earrings and have a white dress with blue and orange designs. My background reads Black Lives Matter. I'm grateful to be in virtual space with each of you today and am honored to be a moderator for this session. Please feel free to tweet and share the happenings at the summit and follow us at Include Disability, at IDGS, hashtag Including Disability, hashtag 2023 Disability Summit, and hashtag HopePunk. Thank you also to our sponsors, the College of Education at the University of Maryland, and the Graduate School's Office of Graduate Diversity and Inclusion at the University of Maryland. Pursuant to Maryland law, we are required to provide verbal or visual notification of recording. If you continue to participate after being notified that the activity is being recorded, your consent to recording is implied. Gratefully, we have accessibility services for this session. American Sign Language interpreter's video will be displayed during the entire session. Attendees can pin videos or remove interpreters from their screen. For a better viewing experience, we recommend that you use a desktop versus a mobile app. Zoom captions will be automated, or you can view them in a separate window on your device by selecting the link in the chat. Cart service can be enabled by selecting the closed captioning feature located on the bottom bar within the Zoom webinar to enable live caption within Zoom, or on your own device by selecting the link within the chat. Please post all questions in the chat, and we will select a representative sample of those questions for the presenters to answer in order to conserve time at the end. Now I'd love to welcome our presenters to introduce themselves before they begin their session, and also ask presenters with slides to describe the images, if they have any, being presented. Thank you so much.
Thank you. My name is Tiffani Hurst, and I use the pronouns she, her. I'm a Black woman with short hair. I have on short silver earrings and a black and white outfit. I am a PhD student at Drexel University School of Education. I have a master's in special education, and my son, my daughter, and I are all neurodivergent, and my daughter has several other disabilities.
Hi, everyone. My name is Monét Harbison. I am a Black woman with short, curly, brownish red hair. I'm wearing a green shirt with a black cardigan. My background is that of a chair with shelves and a lamp against a white room with my name written in cursive in the right-hand corner. I am a neurodiverse PhD student from Drexel University, a first-generation student, and I'm excited to be here with you all today.
And Tryphaena?
Sure. Hi, my name is Tryphaena Hooper. I am a Black woman. I'm wearing a bunch of different colors, but my jacket is yellow, and I'm in front of a virtual background of, I don't know, a hunter green wall with a chandelier of sorts. I am a first-year part-time PhD student at Drexel University, and I'm happy to be with you this afternoon.
Good afternoon. I am Turea Hutson. She, her pronouns. I am a neurodivergent PhD student in her third year. My child is also neurodivergent. My background is of the Drexel University colors, navy blue and gold, with a white stripe, and over in the right-hand corner, it says Drexel University. I am a Black woman. I am wearing my hair into twists. I have dark colored glasses shaped like a hexagon, the frames, and I am wearing a gray shirt with pink flowers. I am happy to be here.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tamecah Pinkney. I am a part-time first-year doctoral student at Drexel University. I am a Black woman. I have on glasses that are kind of tortoiseshell looking. Also green dangly earrings, a black scarf, a white shirt, and a gray sweater. My background is muted because I'm in my principal's office and he has an Eagles flag in the background. No hate on the Eagles, but just blurred it out. And I am a teacher of 22 years and I teach a range of abilities of students. I'm happy to be here this afternoon as well.
So today we'll be talking with you about the School-to-Prison Nexus, zero tolerance policies, disproportionality, potential solutions, and one novel solution. So the School-to-Prison Nexus consists of a complex web of policies, ideas, and institutional practices that converge to link the school and prison regimes. The School-to-Prison Nexus highlights systematic, historical, and multifaceted linkages that support practice and policy. The linkages converge in a way that ultimately results in youth with disabilities, minoritized youth, and low-income youth being taught by unqualified teachers, tested on unreviewed materials, held back grades, placed in special education, suspended multiple times, removed to alternative schools, and ultimately being pushed out of school, which leaves them vulnerable to arrest and incarceration. Indeed, many students are arrested while in school. Monét?
Yes, I couldn't see, the slides aren't being shared.
I see. If we can get those slides.
So I'll get started. We're gonna get the slides up, but I'm gonna talk a little bit about the zero tolerance policies. In about 1982, we saw a shift in the way that we talked about the war on drugs. Reagan enacted zero tolerance policies around drugs, which was focused mostly on inner city neighborhoods. In the late 1980s, zero tolerance policies from the drug war started to make their way into schools. How we treated students, how they interacted with their teachers. They were put in a carceral state at that point. These factors also produced zero tolerance policies due to several rampage shootings that occurred. The Gun-Free Schools Act of 1994 also prompted many zero tolerance policies. Eventually, schools across the country began adding non-violent offenses to these zero tolerance policies. So think of students wearing do-rags or boots or things of that nature, like cultural signatories from the neighborhoods they were. Public displays of affection, even though we kind of normalized the childhood sweetheart, public displays of affection were being criminalized inside the schools. And even truancy, something that impacts a lot of different people. People are late to work all the time, but we don't get imprisoned for it. With the spiraling and spreading of zero tolerance policies, suspensions, expulsions increased. Students with disabilities, minoritized students were significantly overrepresented among those suspended and expelled, due in large part to the phenomenon of disproportionality. So scholars have spent a lot of time studying the origins of the school-to-prison nexus. Disproportionality is the disparate ways in which youth with disabilities, minoritized youth, and low-income youth are overrepresented in the school-to-prison nexus.
So for example, between 2013 and 2014, 60,000 students were arrested while at school, and about a quarter of them had diagnosed disabilities. 2.6 million students were suspended at least once, and 63%, about 63% of them were Black, Brown, or of two or more races. Black students nationally are more likely to be suspended. They're more likely to be in special education, and are more likely to be disciplined with similar violations as their peers. And that is obviously a challenge, especially when we think about how things like neurodivergence can show up, and things, you know, that can happen in a classroom that can make someone uncomfortable, and how they, you know, can engage as a result, and especially bringing into light the cultural piece as well. So students in special education, many of them are students of color and are more likely to be disciplined, again, because of these zero tolerance policies. And so as a result, disproportionality continues to exist in our school systems, and that perpetuates the trauma and the pain that can come from being in an educational system that is not built for people who are different.
There is research that shows that these disproportionate practices are implicated by multiple interconnected educational systems. For example, overrepresentation of students of color in special education categories, which involve practitioner judgment, such as learning disabilities, intellectual disabilities, emotional disturbance disabilities. These disproportionalities, however, do not occur in medically defined disability categories, such as hearing impairment, deaf blindness, or orthopedic impairment. Thus, when we dismantle zero tolerance policies, while they can be helpful in some other ways, it will not solve our disproportionality problem. Notably, the categories of learning disabled, intellectually disabled, and emotional disturbance are based on subjective interpretation of observable student behaviors and are not rooted in biological, physical, or medical diagnoses. So the results of this is a reproduction of anti-Black racial narratives within the traditional school environment, where to be Black is to be unintelligent, undesirable, aggressive, and disruptive. Furthermore, Black students identified under these high incidence categories of learning disabled, intellectual disabled, and emotional disturbance are also more likely than their similarly identified peers to be educated outside of the general educational classroom in more highly restrictive and segregated settings. So what are our possible solutions? Some scholars argue that using restorative justice practices, which focus on mediation and agreement rather than punishment, can combat this disproportionality. Others will argue for increasing authentic school community and parental connections within schools as a way to curb this disproportionality that we see. When punitive measures are completely unavoidable, it is noted that limiting long-term removal from school can help in a positive way students who are overrepresented in the school-to-prison nexus. And finally, when adults take an intersectional view of students' race and disability status, there can be more objectivity.
And one novel way of addressing this program involves the cultural proficiency continuum dialectical protocol. And I'm currently showing a screen that shows the different aspects of the protocol, ranging from cultural destructiveness to cultural incapacity, cultural blindness to cultural competence, and then cultural competence. And finally, at the transformative end of the protocol is cultural proficiency. Dr. Cormier developed the cultural proficiency continuum dialogical protocol to provide a systematic examination of practitioners' cultural competence. Cormier transformed the protocol from a paper-based to a web-based protocol, and it's now referred to as VSORTS. VSORTS uses the cultural proficiency continuum that you see on this slide. VSORTS's core artifact is an adaptation of Q methodology, which is a research technique that is used to understand how individuals' subjectivity shapes their attitudes and beliefs. It is particularly useful in studying complex or controversial issues where people's opinions and values may be diverse or difficult to capture using traditional research methods. Using this technique, Dr. Cormier systematically studies participants' attitudes, beliefs, and regarding asset-based pedagogies, which are an instructional approach that focuses on the strengths, interests, and experiences of learners rather than on their deficits or weaknesses. So we proposed using Dr. Cormier's research to systematically study participants' attitudes and beliefs in connection with the School-to-Prison Nexus issue of disproportionality. We would construct VSETs using 6 evocative vignettes within 5 contextual domains. The contextual domains would involve the topics that we just spoke about that involve restorative justice, school removal limitations, cultural practice education, parent involvement, and community involvement. The vignettes would represent diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging issues corresponding to one of 6 behaviors on the cultural proficiency continuum on the slide. We would use scholar-practitioner collaboration in creation of disproportionality vignettes to be validated by individuals actually caught in the school-to-prison nexus. The purpose of the collaboration is to enable the researcher to consider the on-the-ground issues central to practitioners and to individuals caught in the nexus. The value of using VSORTS is that it's a way to train practitioners about complex school-to-prison nexus disproportionality issues in a way that promotes critical self-reflection and conversation within professional learning environments. The environment mitigates cognitive dissonance and provides a safe space for all stakeholders by enabling the practitioners to engage in vignettes that have been developed and validated using input from all stakeholders. Once practitioners receive their rating, they will have the opportunity to receive additional training in the specific areas regarding disproportionality where they need it. So we know that was a mouthful, and we've provided references that you're going to be able to utilize. We're going to put a link in the chat area. And at this point, we welcome any questions that you might have regarding anything we presented or any questions you have in general.
Thank you so much, Tiffany and all, for providing that amazing insight for us as an audience. As Tiffany mentioned, please ask any questions in our chat window that you may have. Maybe to get us started is open to any of you. As you're navigating the tensions, the challenges in implementing some resolution here, restorative justice or restorative practices sometimes has its limitations for some folks in terms of folks being willing to acknowledge the harm that they cause. What would you speak to as you're thinking through disabled folks and folks of, for Black folks that are experiencing such great harm, that may go through a process where the other parties who are causing harm may not be as acknowledging that harm as they should?
So that is one thing we hope we can address using the VSETs and the cultural proficiency continuum. The continuum is designed to flag areas that individuals might otherwise ignore, including the area of acknowledging harm. And once it's flagged that an individual has a challenge in that particular area, then we would provide professional development that would assess how the individual might be able to reflect a little more and otherwise identify some of the challenges that they are embarking upon that is preventing them from acknowledging the harm.
And I just would also like to add that as we are looking and seeking our own healing in a society that does not always see our humanity, it's important to find fellowship with those who can bring you joy, those who can validate who you are. So while we hope that using the V-sorts methodology would be helpful in helping the person that we need to gather this information, it's also sadly upon us to look for our own healing in different ways.
Thank you both, Tiffani and Monét. I appreciate your very intentional grounding for us in the healing practices that not just involve individual connections, but also community of care, including the systems that are meant to provide us that support rather than to harm us further. A person in the chat also asked more broadly, how could people be better allies in this larger issue? So what does allyship look like for folks that may be connected to this work?
Before I let one of my other colleagues answer, I think it's also important, while the term allyship is often used right now, as we are going through these vast changes in community, we're learning that the term ally takes up space, advocate takes up risk. So when you say, how can we be better advocates in this larger work, is to take up risk and to be very cognizant of the realities that certain communities are facing within the school system. The school system is carceral by nature, and it disproportionately affects youth with disabilities who are either underdiagnosed or overdiagnosed, under supported, and over policed.
You're getting some massive praise in the chat for re-clarifying the terms. Rather than leaning into allyship, which can be problematic, we look toward advocacy, and for some even talk about accomplices, that you really invest the time and energy and take risk in order to align with the work that needs to happen. So thank you. Any other questions in the chat that folks may have for this last 30 seconds or so together?
Actually, I think one of my colleagues did want to finish up opening that question. I was just clarifying the terms of what we use.
Wonderful. Thank you. Please do.
I didn't want to put Tamecah on the spot, but as somebody who's currently, a veteran teacher, I would really like Tamecah to offer her thoughts about what advocacy might look like in this space. Or I know she often talks about building partnerships with parents, so I want to give her a chance to say that.
Thank you for that. And I apologize, I missed some of that. We had very loud announcements going on. But Monét, I thank you for elevating advocacy, because I think that's really what we need. To me, sometimes ally is that empty word that gets thrown around, on a school level. What it really looks like is for parents and anyone who works in a school community to really be educated themselves on the types of students that get overrepresented in our special ed population, and to really be that advocate at the table for parents that you may know or realize don't truly understand what the process is. A lot of times teachers are speaking at a level that a lot of parents in our communities don't really understand. And as someone who has sat in multiple IEP meetings, those IEP meetings are a whirlwind. So just having that education from the bottom up, I think, is extremely important for parents to then really push for the things that they feel will work better for their children than some of the adults that are there for 9 months out of their children's lives. And not downplaying that at all, but I really would love for parents to become better advocates for their children in school settings, because they still do have the power, regardless of what the school makes them feel.
So powerful. Thank you, Tamekah, for that additional elevation of parents and in their involvement in this process. We are a bit over time, and so I do invite us, if you had any further questions that we could potentially hold for another time or share separately in the chat. But thank you one and all for this group to be able to share your wisdom and your grace in this space with us.
Thank you so much, Brian.
You're welcome. Thank you all for attending.